I met the devil at the crossroads of my life. He offered me my heart's desire in exchange for my soul, and fool that I was, I took him up on it. In my defense, I thought he was joking. I didn't know he was the devil. He didn't have a pitchfork or horns or anything. He was just some guy. We met in a dingy basement bar called the Crossroads. I was 6 whiskeys deep and hoping the 7th would bring oblivion when he plunked himself down on the stool next to me and said I looked like I could use some help. I snorted. "No, seriously," he said, signaling the bartender for another round. "I can help." "Oh yeah," I said, eyeing him warily. He looked to be in his mid-40s, with sharp features, close-cropped salt and pepper hair, and clever dark eyes. He wore an expensive-looking charcoal suit, crisp white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, no tie. Not your typical dive bar patron. He smiled, showing perfect white teeth. "You're running out of time, Jack." I set my glass down hard on the scratched wooden bar, sloshing whiskey over the side. The stool swayed under me and I gripped the edge of the bar to keep from toppling off. "How do you know my name?" His eyes glittered with amusement. "I know a lot of things, like the fact that you're in deep with the wrong people. That suitcase of cashew misplaced? Azarov's goons will be coming to collect soon." A chill ran through me and I thought I might be sick. I'd been trying very hard not to think about what would happen when Azarov realized his money was gone. The things his guys did to people who crossed him. I shuddered. "I'm not working for Azarov," the man said, as if reading my mind. "Then who are you?" I asked hoarsely. "Cop." He laughed. "No. Let's just say, I'm someone who can make your problems disappear. For a price." I barked a humorless laugh. "Yeah? Unless you've got 100 grand in that fancy suit of yours. I don't think you can help me, pal." He leaned toward me, his dark eyes boring into mine. When he spoke, his voice was low and hypnotic. "I can give you what you need, Jack, and in return, you give me what I need. Simple as that." "And what is it you need?" I asked, my words slurring slightly. The whiskey was hitting me hard. His smile widened, showing a hint of sharp canines. "Your soul." I blinked at him stupidly. "My soul," I repeated. "Your immortal soul," he said, leaning back. "In exchange, I make all your troubles go away. Azarov, the money, all of it." I picked up my glass with a shaking hand and downed the rest of my whiskey. The alcohol burned my throat but did nothing to clear the fog from my brain. This had to be some kind of joke. A prank. No way this guy was serious. But then I thought about what would happen if Azarov's guys caught up with me. The things they'd do before they finally put a bullet in my head. I shuddered. "You're not asking me to sign anything in blood, are you?" I asked uneasily. The man threw his head back and laughed. "Nothing so dramatic. Just shake my hand and say, 'It's a deal.' That's all it takes." I hesitated, trying to think straight through the alcoholic haze. Could I really do this? Sell my soul to the devil? I wasn't even sure I believed in souls. But if it got me out of this mess. "Tick-tock, Jack," the man said. "I don't have all night. To hell with it." I stuck out my hand. "Deal." As his fingers closed around mine, a jolt like an electric shock traveled up my arm. Gasping, I tried to pull away, but his grip was like a vice. Darkness rushed in and I felt myself falling. I woke on my ratty old couch, head pounding, mouth tasting like something had crawled in there and died. Groaning, I sat up and looked around, disoriented. How had I gotten home from the bar? The last thing I remembered was the weird guy, the deal, my soul. I leapt up from the couch, hangover forgotten, and ran to the kitchen. There on the counter, gleaming and new, was a high-end espresso machine. What the hell? Stuck to the machine was a little yellow post-it note. All taken care of. Enjoy the coffee. L. And beneath the initials, a little smiley face with devil horns. Heart-pounding, I checked the calendar on my phone. 2 days had passed since that night at the bar. 2 days that I had no memory of. With shaking hands, I turned on the espresso machine. It burbled and hissed as it heated up. Soon, the rich scent of coffee filled my tiny apartment. I didn't even own coffee mugs, so I pulled a mostly clean glass from the sink and held it under the spout. The coffee was amazing, smooth and dark with no bitterness at all. If this was what selling your soul got you, maybe it wasn't such a bad deal. No sooner had the thought crossed my mind than someone started pounding at my door. I froze, my stomach turning to ice. Azarov's goons. They'd found me. The pounding intensified. Police! Open up! I dropped the mug. It shattered on the grimy linoleum, splattering me with hot coffee. Police? What the hell was going on? I opened the door to find two uniformed officers standing in the hallway. A beefy, ruddy-faced cop and a no-nonsense-looking woman with steely eyes. They both had their hands resting on their gun holsters. "Jack Dawson?" the woman asked. I nodded mutely. "You're a hard man to find, Mr. Dawson. Mind if we come in?" I stood aside and let them enter, my mind spinning. Were they here about the money? Had Azarov sent them? The male cop let out a low whistle as he took in my apartment. "Nice digs. Guess crime does pay. Huh." I said nothing, watching them warily as they prowled around. The woman picked up a framed photo from the end table. Me and my little sister Abby, arms around each other, grinning at the camera. It had been taken 2 years ago, right before everything went to hell. "Cute kid," she said, setting the photo down. "Be a shame if anything happened to her." My hands curled into fists. "If you're trying to threaten me," she held up a hand. "Relax, tough guy. We're not here to threaten anyone. We just want some answers." The other cop planted himself on my couch, making himself at home. He picked up the remote and turned on the TV, flipping aimlessly through the channels. I was seriously confused now. Answers about what? The woman, her name tag said DT Rollins, fixed me with a piercing stare. "Gregor Azarov. Seems he had a little accident 2 nights ago. Fell down an elevator shaft in his office building. Terrible tragedy." My knees nearly gave out. I sat down hard on one of my rickety kitchen chairs. Azarov was dead? I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "Real funny thing is," Rollins continued, "our friend Gregor had a suitcase with him when he fell. A suitcase full of nice, crisp $100 bills. But when we got on scene, poof, suitcase was gone, vanished into thin air." She leaned in close, her eyes boring into mine. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you, Jack? Because the word is you owed Azarov some serious cash. Cash you didn't have." I shook my head vehemently. "I had nothing to do with that. I swear it. And I meant it." I had been hazy about the details of my deal with the man who called himself L, but I never would have agreed to Azarov being murdered. I wasn't a killer. At least, I didn't think I was. Rollins studied me for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether I was telling the truth. Finally, she sighed and straightened up. "All right, Dawson, you're off the hook. For now. But I think real hard about where you were and what you were doing the night Azarov died. Because if anything about your story doesn't check out, I'll be back, with cuffs next time." She motioned to her partner and he heaved himself off my couch with a grunt. As they made their way out, Rollins paused, her hand on the doorknob. "And Jack? I'd stay out of trouble if I were you. Hate to have to break the news to that sweet sister of yours that her big brother won't be around to look out for her anymore." Then they were gone, leaving me alone with the ruins of my life. I sat there for a long time, my mind churning. Azarov was dead. The money was gone. No one was coming after me. I was free. But at what cost? I thought about the man from the bar. L. I had no memory of shaking his hand, of the cold shock that traveled up my arm when I sealed our deal. But I knew, deep in my bones, that it had happened. I had sold my soul to the devil, and now he had come to collect. As if my dark thoughts had summoned him, there was a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. I didn't move from my chair. Maybe if I just ignored it. "Jack!" A smooth, cultured voice called from the other side of the door. "I know you're in there. Open up. There's a good lad." My heart seized in my chest. It was him. I knew that voice. Slowly, as if in a dream, I stood and walked to the door. My hand seemed to move of its own accord as it turned the knob. He looked exactly as I remembered. Sleek dark hair, flashing eyes, a wicked curve to his mouth. He was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me with amusement. "You," I managed to choke out. What have you done?" Elle pushed off the doorframe and sauntered past me into the apartment, uninvited. He ran a finger along my dusty bookshelf and sked. "Is that any way to greet the man who saved your life, Jack?" "I'm hit." I slammed the door and rounded on him. "Azarov is dead. Did you kill him?" He waved a dismissive hand. "Dead is such an ugly word. Let's just say I removed an obstacle from your path. You're welcome, by the way." I shook my head. "This isn't what I wanted. I never asked you to kill anyone." Elle's eyes narrowed. "You didn't ask me to do anything specific, Jack. You said, and I quote, 'To hell with it. Deal.' You shook my hand of your own free will." The room seemed to tilt around me. I stumbled over to the couch and sank down, putting my head in my hands. This couldn't be happening. It had to be some kind of sick joke, a nightmare. But the smell of sulfur that clung to Elle was all too real. "What happens now?" I asked hoarsely, not looking up. "Are you here to collect?" I heard Elle's footsteps approaching, the rustle of fabric as he crouched down in front of me. He grabbed my wrist in an iron grip and yanked my hand away from my face. I flinched at his touch, but he held me fast. "Look at me, Jack." His voice was soft, almost kind. Reluctantly, I raised my eyes to his. "I'm not a monster," he said gently. "I'm not here to drag you kicking and screaming into the abyss. When you sold me your soul, you entered into a contract. And like any contract, it has terms." He released my wrist and stood up, brushing non-existent lint from his pant leg. "The terms are simple. You get to live your life unencumbered by your past mistakes. The police won't bother you. The criminals you ran with won't come seeking revenge. For all intents and purposes, Jack Dawson died in that elevator shaft right along with Gregor Azarov." My mouth was dry. I swallowed hard. "But my soul."
Elle smiled.
There was no humor in it. "I'll collect that when you draw your last breath. Not a moment before. And how and when that last breath comes, well, that's up to you." He started for the door, then paused. "Of course, try to weasel your way out of our deal, and I can't guarantee that your sister will share your newfound freedom. Lots of terrible things can happen to a pretty little co-ed walking home alone at night." I surged to my feet. "You stay away from her, you son of a bitch." Elle held up his hands in mock surrender. Temper, temper. I have no intention of harming a hair on little Abby's head. As long as you keep your end of the bargain." He opened the door, then turned back to face me. "Enjoy your new life, Jack. You've earned it." Then he was gone. No puff of smoke, no dramatic exit. Just an empty doorway. I stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where he'd been. Then, slowly, like a sleepwalker, I went into the bathroom and turned on the faucet. I splashed cold water on my face, half expecting to wake up from this nightmare. But the face in the mirror was the same. Haggard, unshaven, eyes bloodshot and haunted. The face of a man who had just sold his soul to the devil. I went back into the living room and picked up the framed photo of Abby and me. We looked so happy, so innocent. If she ever found out what I'd done, but she wouldn't find out. She couldn't. I had to keep her safe no matter the cost, even if that cost was my immortal soul. I set the photo back down and went to the kitchen. The espresso machine gleamed at me, taunting. I wanted to smash it into a million pieces. Instead, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Abby? It's me. Listen, I know it's been a while, but I was hoping we could get together, catch up. There's something I need to tell you." The beginning, I met Abby at a little cafe near her college campus. She was already there when I arrived, sipping a latte and poring over a textbook. Her hair was longer than I remembered, pulled back in a messy bun, and there were dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many late nights studying. But when she looked up and saw me, her whole face lit up in a smile. "Jack," She jumped up and threw her arms around me, nearly knocking over her chair in the process. I can't believe it. What are you doing here? I hugged her back, feeling a lump form in my throat. It had been months since I'd seen her. Months of dodging her calls, making excuses, too ashamed to face her after everything I'd done. But now, with the specter of my deal with Elle hanging over me, I knew I couldn't stay away any longer. We sat down and ordered coffee. Abby chatted away about her classes, her roommates, the cute guy she'd met at a party last weekend. I tried to listen, to act like everything was normal, but my mind kept drifting back to Elle's parting words. Lots of terrible things can happen to a pretty little co-ed walking home alone at night. Jack? Hello, Earth to Jack. Abby waved a hand in front of my face, jolting me back to the present. Are you okay? You seem distracted. I forced a smile. Yeah, sorry. Just tired. Listen, Abby, there's something I need to tell you. Her brow furrowed in concern. What is it? Is everything all right? I took a deep breath.
No.
No, it's not. I'm in trouble, Abby. Big trouble. Her eyes widened. What kind of trouble? Is it the drugs again? I winced. She knew about my stint in rehab, the months I'd spent trying to kick a pill habit that had nearly destroyed me. But she didn't know about the debts I'd racked up, the dangerous people I'd gotten mixed up with. I'd always tried to shield her from that part of my life. No, it's not the drugs. I hesitated, trying to find the right words. I made a deal with someone, a bad deal, and now I don't know how to get out of it. Abby reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm and soft. Jack, whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. You're not alone. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. If only she knew the truth, that I was more alone than I'd ever been, that I'd sold the only thing I had left to give. I squeezed her hand, then gently pulled away. I appreciate that, Abby, more than you know, but this is something I have to handle on my own. I needed to see you, to tell you that no matter what happens, I love you, and I'm sorry for everything. Abby's eyes filled with tears. Jack, you're scaring me. What's going on? Please, just tell me. I shook my head and stood up. I can't.
I'm sorry.
I have to go. She jumped up and grabbed my arm.
No.
You don't get to just drop a bomb like that and walk away. I'm not letting you leave until you explain what the hell is going on. People were starting to stare. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm.
I'm sorry, Abby.
I never meant for any of this to happen, but it's too late now. I made my choice. I turned and walked out of the cafe, ignoring her cries for me to come back. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, leaving her like that, but I knew it was for the best. The less she knew about my deal with Elle, the safer she'd be. I spent the next few weeks waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept expecting Elle to show up at my door, or in my dreams, demanding his pound of flesh. But there was nothing. No sign of him at all. Against my better judgment, I started to relax. Maybe he'd forgotten about our deal. Maybe I was off the hook. And then the nightmares started. It was always the same. I was back in that basement bar, sitting on the same rickety stool. But instead of Elle, it was Abby sitting next to me. She was crying, begging me to help her. And then the shadows would come to life, reaching out with clawed hands to drag her away. I would try to grab her, to pull her back, but I was frozen in place, helpless. I would wake up screaming, drenched in cold sweat. The dreams felt so real, so visceral. I started to dread going to sleep at night. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit around waiting for Elle to make his move. I had to find a way out of our deal to get my soul back. But how? In desperation, I started hitting up my old contacts in the city's seedy underbelly. Drug dealers, loan sharks, fences, anyone who might have information on how to deal with a guy like Elle. Most of them just laughed in my face. A few got angry, thinking I was messing with them. But one guy, an old bookie named Saul, got real quiet when I mentioned Elle's name. You don't want to mess with that one, kid, he said, shaking his head. Trust me, I've seen what happens to people who try to welch on a deal with him. It ain't pretty. I leaned in close, Saul, please. I'm begging you. If you know anything that can help me. Saul sighed heavily and glanced around to make sure no one was listening. All right, listen up. I heard about this guy once, down in New Orleans. Some kind of voodoo priest. Word is, he knows how to break contracts with guys like your friend L. My heart leaped. What's his name? Where can I find him? Saul shook his head. I don't know his name, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. You don't want to go messing around with that kind of dark magic. Kid, it always comes with a price. I slammed my fist on the table, making him jump. I already paid a price, Saul. I sold my goddamn soul. If this voodoo priest can help me get it back, then I'll pay whatever price he asks. Saul held up his hands in surrender. All right. No need to get all worked up. I'll see what I can find out. But I'm telling you, kid, you're playing with fire here. Don't say I didn't warn you. True to his word, Saul got back to me a few days later with a name and an address scribbled on a scrap of paper. Papa Legba, 1031 Toulouse Street, New Orleans. I didn't hesitate. I threw some clothes in a bag, emptied out my meager savings account, and caught the next flight to New Orleans. The whole way there, I kept seeing Abby's face in my mind, tear-streaked and pleading. I had to do this for her. The address Saul gave me turned out to be a tiny, run-down shotgun shack in the heart of the French Quarter. The windows were boarded up and the front door was painted a garish shade of purple. A hand-lettered sign in the front yard read, "Spiritual Advisor." I stood there for a long moment, second-guessing myself. What was I doing here? Chasing down some crackpot voodoo priest on the word of a two-bit bookie? But then I thought of Abby, and my resolve hardened. I marched up to the front door and knocked 3 times. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. I was just about to give up and walk away when the door suddenly swung open. Standing there was the oldest man I had ever seen. He was stooped and withered, his skin like crumpled parchment. But his eyes were bright and sharp, boring into me with an intensity that made me take a step back. "Jack Dawson," he said in a voice like rustling leaves. "I've been expecting you." I blinked in surprise. You know my name?" A ghost of a smile touched his weathered face. "I know many things, child." Come in. "We have much to discuss." He turned and shuffled back into the house, leaving the door open behind him. I hesitated for a moment, then followed him inside. The interior of the shack was dimly lit and smelled strongly of incense. Every available surface was cluttered with candles, bones, and strange, twisted fetishes. Papa Legba led me to a small table in the center of the room and motioned for me to sit down. "Now then," he said, settling himself across from me. "You have come seeking my help, yes?" I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. I made a deal with a man named L. I sold him my soul."
Papa Legba nodded slowly.
"Ah yes, the crossroads demon. He is a tricky one, that L. Always looking for loopholes, for ways to twist the bargain in his favor. Can you help me?" I asked, hating the desperation in my voice. Saul said, "He said you knew how to break contracts like this." Papa Legba leaned back in his chair, steepling his bony fingers in front of him. "It is possible, yes, but it will not be easy, and it will require a sacrifice." My heart sank. "What kind of sacrifice?" He fixed me with that piercing stare again. "The kind that costs more than money, child. The kind that costs blood." I swallowed hard. "Whose blood?" "Yours, of course, and the blood of the one you love most in this world." "Abby." He was talking about Abby.
No.
"No way. I wouldn't put her in danger, not even to save my own skin." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the wooden floor. "No deal. I won't do it. I won't drag my sister into this."
Papa Legba shrugged, unconcerned.
"As you wish, child. But know this, the longer you wait, the higher the price will be. El is not a patient man. Sooner or later, he will come to collect what is owed to him." I turned to leave, bile rising in my throat. What had I been thinking? Coming here. I was a fool to believe there was any way out of this. "Wait!" Papa Legba called out as my hand touched the doorknob. There may be another way, a way to break the contract without spilling innocent blood. I turned back slowly. What way? He smiled, and there was no warmth in it. The way of the knife, child. The way of death. He shuffled over to a cluttered shelf and pulled down a small, ornate wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of red velvet, was a wicked-looking dagger with a bone handle and a blackened, wavy blade. This blade was forged in the depths of the underworld, Papa Legba intoned, running a gnarled finger along its edge. Tempered in the fires of damnation and quenched in the blood of 100 sinners. It has the power to sever any contract, to break any bargain. I stared at the knife, my heart pounding. What do I have to do? Papa Legba handed me the box. Take the blade, find El, and drive it through his black heart. Only then will your soul be free. I looked at him sharply. But El isn't human. He's a demon. How am I supposed to kill a demon? Every demon has a weakness, child. Find El's, and you will find your chance. I closed the box with shaking hands and slipped it into my jacket. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. Papa Legba waved his hand dismissively. Your thanks are not necessary. But know this, Jack Dawson. The path you walk is a dark one, full of danger and temptation. Stray but a little, and it will consume you utterly. There are worse fates than damnation, child. Pray you do not find them. And with those ominous words echoing in my ears, I left Papa Legba's shack and ventured out into the steamy New Orleans night, the demon-forged dagger a heavy weight against my side. I didn't know if I had the strength to do what needed to be done. But for Abby's sake, for my soul's sake, I had to try. Little did I know, my meeting with Papa Legba had not gone unobserved. From the shadows of a nearby alley, a figure watched me walk away, a figure with eyes that glowed a deep, malevolent red. El had found me at last, and this time there would be no escape. To be continued,